As we're waiting to get started, if you would like to start by just introducing yourself, we are doing a hybrid session, so for those in the room, I will be referring to the chat every once in a while. But if you can either introduce yourself in the chat if you're joining us online, or to someone near you in the room, you can share with someone nearby you or in the chat your name, role, and state that you are joining us from. All right, so we'll have a few breaking points during the presentation where you'll have time to share a little bit more about your programs with each other, some of your strategies that we'll be talking about today. So we'll have plenty of time to talk and share and connect, and as well at the end of the presentation. Just to get started, so the session that you're joining for today is creating successful citizenship programs, recruitment, retention, and reflection on our program at the Literacy Center of West Michigan, located in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We are a USCIS funding recipient. Previous recipient. And my name is Carrie Machkuri. I've been at the Literacy Center for about 10 years. I do have several QR codes in my PowerPoint, and actually the handouts that you have on the chairs nearby you is a very shortened version of the presentation, but code here on the last slide on your handout will go to a Google Drive that has the full PowerPoint slide deck, as well as all of the resources that I will be talking about today. So you only need to take one piece of paper back home with you. You don't need to worry about fitting it in your luggage or what have you. You'll have everything available online after the presentation. The handout is also uploaded into the Whova app. So if you happen to lose that piece of paper, do not worry. And just know that this session is being recorded. It is a hybrid session. And I believe it is 6 months that you would have access to all of the recorded presentations from COABE within the Whova app. So just so that you're aware, those resources will remain there. You don't have to worry the week after the conference that you need to hustle and download everything, right? Um, so today we're going to be talking about an overview of the citizenship programming that we have at the Literacy Center, some of our best practices, recruitment strategies and curriculum resources in particular, what we use that works, some reflections from our teachers, as well as some information about the USCIS process, which is a little bit outdated as of last week. In my PowerPoint, but my supervisor is here to kind of talk a little bit more about that, as well as one of my colleagues. So the three of us are joining you today for this presentation from Michigan. Just a little bit background about me. So I have a bachelor's in social work and a master's in TESOL. Some of my experience includes teaching ESL to adults, training our teachers, developing the curriculum for many of our pilot classes in our programming. I'm an IET coordinator specifically, but I also work with our English for specific purpose classes at the Literacy Center, and in supporting the professional development of our instructors. Some of the projects that I have been involved with as the COABE State Advocate for Adult Education Fellowship, and the Teaching Skills That Matter pilot program that was through OCTAE and AIR. As well as the IET Advanced Boot Camp that was through LINCS and AIR and OCTAE. A little bit background of the program that we're talking about today. So the Literacy Center started as the Kent County Literacy Council. It was one of the many literacy councils that were started in the mid-1980s nationally. The program, though, in particular, at the Literacy Center, where our citizenship classes are housed, is in our customized workplace English program, where we customize different classes for different needs within our program, whether it be pre-employment, during employment, or post-employment classes, citizenship being one of those categories under that umbrella. That program started in 2001. Fast forward to 2019, that is when we piloted our first citizenship program under the umbrella of our IELCE funding. Then, as we know, in 2020, COVID happened, and we pivoted to having our citizenship classes virtually. We did expand some community partnerships during that time for those virtual classes, expanding the program to include our local elementary school, local Asian American Association, and other community partners that wanted to host our citizenship classes. And then in 2022, we were awarded for the first time a grant from the USCIS to expand that work. So we were, the end of last year, one of 36 nationally organizations that received that new grant cycle of funding, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation, just so you have a little bit of background. Just a brief overview of all of our program that we have at the Literacy Center. So we do one-on-one customized tutoring services. That includes some of our citizenship services. Some of our learners need a little bit more flexible of an environment, working just 2 hours, 1 day a week with someone one-on-one. We also have a family literacy program, citizenship, of course, we're talking about today. We have on-site workplace literacy in ESL, which I'll mention briefly because we have done citizenship for workplace contracts. We have leveled classes, some bridge classes, pre-IET, and then IETs. If you're interested about IETs, I am going to be presenting on those later today. So why citizenship classes? Why did we think, oh, this would be a great idea to start at the Literacy Center? Well, we saw this growing need, right, for citizenship classes, and maybe you had noticed also in your communities a growing need to support English language learners in becoming citizens, right? So in the Grand Rapids, West Michigan area, we have been experiencing a growth in new immigrant populations. Refugees, but also we have a large Hispanic population, adults who are eligible, and maybe it's not within their grasp quite yet to become a citizen as far as their language level. There is that proficiency requirement, right? They need to be able to communicate, to engage with the interview. They need to be able to understand the documents for filling out the N-400. There is a lot of language that is involved with applying to become a citizen and passing the interview. We've had a lot of community engagement and requests from learners for citizenship programming prior to starting our citizenship classes in 2019. And more learners in our one-on-one tutoring program were requesting it. We were buying more material. So we started noticing that trend. And in our classes as well, our general English classes, that topic was requested quite frequently, not just to learn about the history and civics, but to prepare for becoming a citizen. So because of all of those reasons, we decided to pilot our first citizenship class. So recruitment. How did we recruit learners for our first citizenship class? So we relied a lot on our community partners. So we have several cultural community centers in the Grand Rapids area. We have Refugee Center. We have different associations, Hispanic Center, Asian American Association, as well as different church leaders and local schools that were asking for their parents to get support for becoming citizens so that they could more fully participate and advocate for their students. We have a fairly good relationship with our community organizations, including our local ISDs, other adult education programs in the area, including the community college, as well as other workforce development agencies that are on our side of the state. So just connecting with those individuals, getting out the information about an upcoming class is some ways that we recruit for our learners. It's an intermediate school district. So an adult education program that is connected with a K through 12 system. It might be called different things in other places. Yeah. Okay. And I know that our world is very acronym heavy. So if I use any acronyms, just like stop me and please ask. Right. But another way that we recruited was through our learner leaders. So we've had learners who know about our program, who speak to the experience that they've had in our program, who then will share and promote that class that's coming up to other people in our community. Specifically, a learner in our program, Amisi, who is a U.S. citizen now, has been a really great advocate for our citizenship program. And even through this time of federal freezes and interruptions in funding, he has done different local news interviews with us to share about his experience in our classes and continues to promote. I know I text him regularly different images of flyers that are coming up, and he'll share them out to us. So relying on learners as leaders is a great way to share information about upcoming programs, especially if it's a new program. because they have the buy-in. They already know what a great investment your program is. Um, and then we also work with some bilingual resource navigators. So in particular, we have a little Nepali community in our area, as well as a Burmese community. And so we connect with our Asian American Association, and they have some bilingual navigators who help us with translating flyers into multiple languages and sharing those out with their caseload of clients that they're supporting with resource navigation. So there's a lot of different ways to successfully recruit, especially if it's a brand new class that you're doing. So we're going to take just a moment to chat, either in the room or online, just to start thinking about retention strategies that work for your program already that maybe you could apply to starting a citizenship class. So if you can turn to your neighbor and answer the question, what retention strategies work for your program? We'll take it just a few minutes to chat about this. All right. Does anyone in the room want to volunteer to share one of their best practice retention strategies? Yeah.
So I've kind of this citizenship class that's done by a volunteer, so I came here to see kind of what you did because we're anticipating he's already retired, but he doesn't send his retirement, but he's going to retire again, probably in the next year. So we're trying to figure out, because he's done this for years. We never planned anything. He just always had all his own thing, the material. So now I'm like, okay, we need to really get something together so the next person comes in, they'll know what they're doing. But our retention has been pretty good because we have a 93% success rate passing the citizenship test. So they tell their friends and they tell their friends, and we, so that's been our retention. It's just success rate, and they're telling their friends, so they bring their friends and family in. We don't advertise in the school. We don't advertise in church. It's just all word of mouth and within our school itself. But
That's great for those online. The retention strategy was the success rate speaks for itself, and word of mouth, right? People bring their friends and family because they know that it works. That would be a great thing to put on a flyer. We have a 93% success rate for those who take our class.
they go over the questions and the writing practice, but they practice the interview. They go over the form, and we go on the outside. They're not legal advice. They're not a lawyer, but this is what we feel we need to know, and you need to know how to answer the questions. You need to know what you put on your application to ensure that husband can fill it out.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
That's what led to the success rate. Practicing the input.
Repeating, practicing, being familiar with exactly what you wrote on the N400 is so important. Especially with the information that we're kind of hearing about the process now from USCIS that, they might be going over every single section now. They might be going and asking every single question. They might be rephrasing questions in a way that is making it more difficult. We'll talk about it a little bit later in our presentation. And then I would recommend, there was a presentation yesterday by Bill Bliss. So if you go into the Whova app, it was around I think it's 350. Yep. So scroll down to 350 on Tuesday, and then all of his handouts are uploaded in the Whova app, and he goes over a lot of that. I'll take one more person in the room to share retention strategy. A retention strategy.
Okay, I really think engaging classes is what keeps students coming because, of course, there are the 100 civics questions, but those are easily available. And if you want to memorize answers, you can do that on your own. But if you provide a curriculum with interesting, engaging classes that cover the scope of government, history, civics, engagement, all of that, I think students will simply want to keep coming. That's been our experience.
Thank you for so much for sharing. So I'll talk a little bit of some of our retention strategies, which might be very similar to some of yours. So first off, we do a lot of rapport building, not only in our citizenship classes, but across all of our programming. Our idea is that our classes, our cohorts are a community. We have a community of learners. They get to know each other. They become friends. They make relationships together. They sometimes rely on each other for rides, right? So that rapport building is very important from the get-go. I'll give an example of one of our citizenship teachers. She will send a welcome letter with her picture on it. This is for actually an online class. So Our learners really aren't engaging with us at all in person for this class, other than doing their test ahead of time. We do CASAS testing pre and post, but we will send a letter, a welcome letter in the mail. She sends out an outline of, what we're going to do, and she actually does weekly letters because we send material packets to our learners for the online class. So she'll do a hello, how are you this week? She uses little Bitmojis throughout the class just to kind of express her enthusiasm for the class. And then throughout the class, sending emails, following up about lessons and questions, sending text messages, keeping in constant communication with our learners so that they know that we are there for them. We do a lot of first day icebreaker activities, learners getting to know each other, but also making sure that learners know that we want to know more about them, right? We care about, what their favorite food is. We care about, these things that, are not related necessarily to citizenship, but are related to the learner as an individual person. And showing excitement. So we follow up with our learners throughout their process of becoming a citizen. When they send in their application, we show excitement for that, congratulations for that. Even at the end of the class, when they complete a class with us, we'll do certificates and celebrate their success for completing a class with us, regardless of whether they're ready or not to apply for citizenship. We are showing our excitement throughout the process, the steps that they're taking with us. We also do a lot of checking in. So if someone is habitually late or hasn't shown up to class for a week, we want to know why for our own purposes, for our data entry purposes, but also just to show that we care. We missed you last week. Can you tell me, why you missed class? And if it's something, with their car or their family, we express, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. Just your very basic relationship building with learners has been kind of some of our successful best practices with retention. And then also involving family and community supports, particularly as accountability partners. So if a learner is coming in with their brother or their sister who is their ride for an in-person class, making sure that, they know about their schedule. Oh, you're gonna bring your mom to class every week. Okay, great. Are you gonna also help her, study? She's gonna have a lot of homework. You can practice together, and kind of pulling in the family to become a support system during the learning process. And then using different language supports throughout. So again, those bilingual community navigators, maybe we'll pull them in. We have some bilingual teachers, so making sure learners get connected to whatever supports they need throughout the process of the class and applying for citizenship. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about curriculum that we use in our program. And I'll preface this by saying I don't work for any of these publishers that I'm mentioning, but I do like several of their materials. So one of the materials that we use again and again is the Pro Literacy Passing the Test series. I feel like this publisher always has the books up to date, and they are in the room. Um, yes, yeah. Well, thank you. Great work. And I know it's a lot to keep up with because, they came out with a new N400 and they're coming out with another new N400, and now you have to, I think I spoke to Pro Literacy yesterday to get the heads up that the newest edition will be coming out in August. Yeah, I think the teacher's guide, new edition, perhaps will be coming out in August, depending on what happens with the interview. Yeah.
No idea. It keeps changing day to day, so it's really hard to update it.
Yes, yeah. But high quality materials, high quality activities within the book series. So this is the one that we purchase for each of our students to have a copy. We feel like it's really important for our learners to have a book that they can call their own. And then the teachers will supplement with other activities throughout the class as well. One of our instructors in particular makes paired handouts. So if you think of this as the textbook, she creates handouts that act as a workbook to provide additional practice. And I have, so the QR code I mentioned to some of you as you were walking in, the QR code has the access to this Google Drive that has my full slide deck from our presentation today. That QR code is uploaded also on Whova, but I also have lesson materials that our instructors use throughout the classes. And so this is an example. So this pairs with chapter 9 of the Pro Literacy book series and reviews the material. Now this is out of date, but very easy to edit when you download it. Maybe this will need to be updated, I don't know. And so learners can practice at home with the textbook and then come into the classroom and then review in another handout with the teacher in class. So that's just an example of what one of our instructors does. She also creates great little video handouts that I've included in here, where the learners will watch a short video and answer questions and discuss. So there are some materials in there related to that that our instructor has allowed me to share with you. So we have those paired handouts that we use. We use video handouts, and we also do weekly mailings for our online classes, as I mentioned, because we feel like it's really important, in the digital world that our learners are not just staring at the screen and trying to take notes on their own. It's a study skill, right? To be able to process auditory information and maybe record notes yourself. So our online instructors do a great job of providing those handouts that are needed to outline the materials that she is covering with them so that they can follow along more easily. Sure.
In the post office mail them, including books.
So the books, yes, sometimes. So previously I have dropped them off at people's houses before, or if they come in for an intake and they sign up for the class, and we know that, they're going to be joining this class and I have it on hand, I'll hand it to them. But yeah, we do media mailing for the books, so we'll mail out the books separately at the media mail rate. And then the mailings that we do weekly are like those paper handouts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we also supplement with some web-based curriculum. So our instructor really likes to use USA Learns because it's free, and she can track the hours of her learners, create like a class cohort in USA Learns, and all of that is free as well. Because our learners are, meeting online, sometimes they can experience technical difficulties and that results to them having lower attendance. So we are able to supplement their attendance with assignments on USA Learns, just as a way to support that learning a little bit more. We also use Burlington English as a resource for our learners in classes and for our instructors for teaching the in-class lessons. And Burlington English does have some civics lessons that pair well with some of the topics that are in the Pro Literacy series and related to passing the interview. Just some additional online resources. So we really love uscitizenpod.com. It's a podcast, worksheets series. I think they have a YouTube channel as well. But it does a lot of great modeling. What does the interview look like? What type of conversations and dialogues are you having with the different staff that are at the location where you're going to for the interview? And then as of today, still, the USCIS has lesson and program resources that are open source for anyone to use. You don't have to be a USCIS grant recipient to use them. I have the QR code there that goes to this educational products for educators page. But I'll also let you know that I'm a somewhat suspicious person or maybe over-prepared, and I have downloaded the majority of these, and they are uploaded to the Google Drive that I mentioned. Yeah, we are thinking that they will likely disappear, so I have them uploaded. I have some of them uploaded here, as well as these ones in this USCIS resources is kind of more strategies and best practices for coordinators, sample curricula, and then under lesson materials, the different topics here are the USCIS materials. I am not sure. Does not look like it. But it could be available maybe on Amazon. I don't know. Some people under resources. There's still a lot of great resources that are on here. So if there it is. So I'm going to make sure that I download, it's a little project of mine to download more of these. And I'll be uploading them into that Google Drive. So you might notice that the Google Drive becomes a little bit bigger post conference time. Yeah. So yeah, high quality resources that the USCIS has developed over the years that we certainly do not want to see go away. And definitely, take advantage of those resources and downloading them while you still can. Also in our class, we do a lot of engaging in-class activities, in person and online. We have mock interviews that our students will do. So we actually pull tutors from our one-on-one tutoring program and invite them to come in and act as interviewers. We provide them with materials to use, and we essentially replicate what it is like to do an interview. We have scripts that they'll use that the learners can practice ahead of time, but that our tutors can use while they're interviewing the learners. We have them, ask the "Have you ever" questions. We have them, ask 3 of the related to the oath questions, practice the civics parts of the test, the reading and the writing portion, and then we provide a rubric that they can use to essentially score the learner, so that they can get a little bit of feedback about, how they did. So all of that is also inside of the app. We have our learners fill out for the purpose of this interview, and I believe that this is from US Pod. Yeah, this is from uscitizenpod.com. So our learners will fill out this abridged N400 for the purpose of that mock interview that they'll do with a tutor. And practicing like different vocabulary. This is outdated, but still has a lot of the questions, just the different parts are not up to date. But I'm sure that US Citizen Pod has some more up-to-date resources as well. I would highly recommend that you check them out. Updated again. Yeah. Always keep checking those resources and those websites that have resources for citizenship. And, even if you just cross out part 12 and you write part 9, you know, we also do legal presentations. So I'll talk a little bit about this more, but some of our teacher reflections was related to, I'm an ESL teacher. I am not, I do not know this legal lingo, right? So we find it very important for learners to, have presentations from an immigration attorney, and to be connected to an immigration attorney. I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's part of the USCIS grant. We also have some out-of-class activities. So we have done field trips in Grand Rapids. We have the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum, which does free trips for classes, and we qualify as a class. We go to the public museum. We have gone to the state capitol in Lansing in Michigan before. And then we connect learners to legal assistance appointments. So I am going to briefly hand it off to my supervisor, Marcus Little, to talk a little bit about the USCIS process and kind of an update on that.
Thanks, Carrie, and I will keep this brief. But as Carrie mentioned, we were originally a USCIS grant recipient in 2022. We applied again for another 2-round cycle of funding. And for anyone who wasn't at the breakfast this morning, the headline is that Thursday we received notice that the grant was being terminated, and that was true for all 36 recipients across the country. So we were all excited to share about our great work, and we are looking to continue this work with other funding sources, trying to figure out how to do that. But that is the update. So this is now a short part of the presentation, and because the future there is very uncertain. But that's, again, the urgency around downloading the resources, because this is very much tied to their agenda to not have a diverse nation made up of immigrants who have come here and become naturalized citizens. It is in litigation, and so, I mean, as a program, we're not making any plans on that, but we are certainly following that. We have, our state attorney general has filed suit as part of the 22 or 26 states that are suing the administration. And so we have shared our names with her, so we're listed on that. We're certainly paying attention. We've been in contact with our local congresswoman, Hillary Skolton. She's very focused on trying to navigate this and try to redress it, but I would be lying if I said I was hopeful or optimistic, especially in the short term. So if you were considering being a USCIS grantee, I would not recommend pursuing that. And just on never mind the availability of the funding, I think as an organization, there's also a factor of, we entered into a contract with the United States government. None of the terms of that contract were breached on our end, and yet it was terminated. And I won't share the narrative of the last 5 months. It wasn't like we just suddenly got this email out of nowhere. There was a whole chain of events. The level of trust or confidence in applying for this type of grant again, I would certainly think twice. And but that's just my own perspective. So, no great news on the funding front, but that's why Carrie had me come to share that news. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming.
I always like to pass the mic off to Marcus to share the bad news because I'm like, I want to share the positive news. So I will just mention very briefly for the grant funding aspect. As a literacy center, we were playing with the idea of applying in 2020. This type of grant is a 2-year grant cycle. We prepared for it. We, you know, didn't have the capacity to do it because of COVID. We had everything prepared so that when 2022 came around, we were ready at that time because we had already prepared our application. There is a QR code here that goes to a PowerPoint presentation that goes a little bit more over like the program requirements. So I imagine it would be fairly similar if they do reinvent this grant in the future, if they're renaming it, what have you. So it's always good to be prepared as a program anyways. So it might be a good practice to just go through the steps of compiling the information so that when it hopefully does come back in some capacity, you are prepared. Some program adjustments that we had to make in order to fit within the grant is our ESFL levels we had to pay attention to. So we do multi-level programming, but within the parameters of the USCIS grant at that time, we could only serve levels 2 through 5, and then they expanded it to level 6 with our 2024 grant. So just keeping that in mind that they do have that requirement. They do require testing. So we do CASAS testing. We already were doing CASAS testing. That is the test that they were asking us to do prior to the learners being enrolled into the program and to track that metric of their gains.
And then the other change this time around was that they started requiring, they did not require us to report CASAS reading and listening levels. So there was a little bit of a question, as though they're taking our word for it, that they are level 2 through 6, but in our quarterly reports, we were not asked for that. What we were asked for was their score on the CASAS civics tests. So we had to add that to our database, and the good news is it's a much shorter test. It takes 20 or 30 minutes. It's just multiple choice questions on the civics. If their literacy level is too low for that, there is a civics reading test that CASAS has, and so you would put them into that. But they're now asking for those test results rather than their CASAS reading or listening for their English functional level. I'm not sure what the reason for that is, other than because we ran into this during the last grant. So we're WIOA funded. WIOA funding cannot be used for citizenship instruction because that was our first recourse. And Michigan had previously not been aware of that guidance from the federal government. So we had been using our IELCE funds for citizenship instruction. And then Michigan made it very clear that that was not allowable because USCIS funding exists. So this is kind of the interesting limbo that we're currently in, because now USCIS funding does not exist. But USCIS funding cannot be used for ESL instruction. Although that's exactly what they're asking us to do. But we had ESL in our grant application, and they came back to say, wait, we can't fund ESL. And I was like, okay, but you're asking us to improve people's English functional levels as a reported gain. So I think that's the reason for taking that test out. But they do want us to serve English language learners. So just to say that's been one of the changes, and I don't know how that will play out again if the grant is renewed, but just that's one of the things that they were looking at. So if you're not familiar with that CASAS, because we were not familiar with the CASAS citizenship or civics test, that might be one tool to start looking into. Yes. Correct.
Citizenship. So ILCE has that C civics component.
Yeah. No,
that's not supposed to be the sole focus
right.
of the class.
Right. Yeah, so we can't advertise a class that is specifically focused on citizenship preparation, but we can go over U.S. civics information in the context of a broader class. But if people were in that and saying, I'm already a citizen, or I'm not interested in pursuing citizenship, it might create some, just from a programming standpoint. But yeah, that's. Yep. Yeah.
When we use the class test, the magic 5, magic 6,
Hmm. Okay.
I thought that was that way. And then the writing component to it on the back where you have to actually dictate the sentences like they would in the way it was. And you write, and then you actually have to have a sentence to you as the reading component, unless they have a high enough reading score on it.
You're talking about within the interview or as part of the CASAS testing? Okay. Yeah, we only, right.
65, yeah, 66.
Oh, are you doing paper pencil testing or e-tests? We do e-tests. So we don't have paper pencil testing.
Paper pencil includes the writing.
Okay. Something maybe to consider, because we do have learners with difficulty with digital literacy, so paper pencil. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Writing, writing them as writing. So that's why we.
Yeah. And I mean, we include the practice for that in our classes. Our test doesn't include that for e-testing. I don't know why there's a different. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We do include that in our mock interview process. I was not aware that CASAS tests had our. Mm-hmm. Yes. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. That is interesting. Yeah.
They only evaluate us on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Maybe something that we should look into. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. A few more program adjustments really quick that we had to make. So we did classes on a semester base to fit within the USCIS model. They do 10 to 12 week classes. And so we had to kind of reconfigure our curriculum to kind of meet that and do them on more of a quarterly basis than on a semester basis. And then a component that was required was the referrals to different legal support and integrating those legal presentations into our classes. So at the start of our grant, we used an organization called Immigrant Connection. There are several immigrant connections in our area. I think they are national. So we use them for their DOJ accredited representatives. They provided us with reduced fees for assistance, resources for instructors. And then in our second iteration of the grant, we have been working with a more local organization, Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates. And they have been using our space to provide legal assistance workshops as well as those presentations in our classes. And kind of all around support. The reduced fees, I don't know if it's the same for Lighthouse Immigrant Advocates, but it's like it's a $50 consultation fee, and then they support throughout the rest of the process. So quite a bit less than perhaps thousands or hundreds of dollars that people might be spending on legal assistance, right? Just a $50 fee. So that was fantastic to be included within our USCIS part of the classes. And then a little bit that was involved with the USCIS grant was quarterly reporting on pass rates and how many people had attended oath ceremonies. So just a little bit of information about that. Sorry, I'm rushing through here because I know we have just 10 minutes left. Some instructor reflections. Our instructors loved being part of this journey for individuals in our classes. They create great groups of people, even those who were meeting online. This is one of our COVID classes that met online in partnership with a local elementary school. So these were parents at an elementary school. They met online, and our teacher hosted them at the end of the class at her home to have a meal together. So building those relationships, sharing stories, success stories with each other, inviting graduated, well, I say graduated, but those that have passed the citizenship test to come back and speak to their fellow classmates. Creating an environment where they are learners together, instructors as learners, learning about the journey and experiences of the students in our classes, as well as that culture sharing aspect. We always have some sort of class party at the end of the cohort where they are sharing their food with each other and kind of just celebrating each other and each other's accomplishments and what's going on in life. Some challenges that our instructors had expressed was not knowing that legal knowledge, but also that the class was, multi-level, multilingual. So making sure that we're resourcing the teachers with those things. Just a few tips from the teachers that I've collected over the years is making sure to not teach an opinion. Of course, we want to be as unbiased as possible, especially in this type of a class environment. Our teachers are in a position of power always with our learners in some way, right? And our learners are looking up to the opinion of our teachers. We don't want to be politically biased at all, even though right now it can feel kind of hard to not be. Always being politically correct. Focus more on building confidence, right? It is a high stakes situation for our learners to become a citizen. And just as with a job interview, it's kind of like it's a pass or fail situation, right? So making sure that our learners feel comfortable and confident when they walk through the doors of that federal building into that space and before they meet the interviewer. And then highlighting specifically the knowledge that is needed. We've had teachers in the past who have been very passionate about the subject of government and history and all of the intricacies, that we can share with our learners about who did what in history, but really just focusing on the knowledge that is really just needed for passing the test is really important. We have a long history in the United States that we could, dive into in a 4-year program, right? But our learners only just need like a drop in the bucket of that knowledge to pass the test. So we don't want to overwhelm them with too much random, wonderful facts about the United States. But yeah, just some tips that our teachers have shared with me. And then always remembering to celebrate successes, right? We take pictures of class cohorts. We celebrate with in-house certificates. We celebrate our learners on social media and at different annual events. So just making sure to celebrate those successes along the way as much as you can. Again, that QR code will go to the Google Drive that has the full slide deck, has a lot of those resources, both that our instructors have shared and that are downloaded from the USCIS website. Any questions? I think we have a few minutes if anyone has any questions or comments. Maybe we can start with some questions that might be in the chat. Okay. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I want to share a resource with you guys. A little committee of volunteer citizenship educators has started monthly sharing sessions for other citizenship educators. They're remote, so you can get on from anywhere in the country. If you are interested in learning more, get one of these cards and you can join us for free.
Put the information in the chat.
Yeah.
And I'll scan this and I'll put it in the Google Drive too.
I really have a question. I have a comment more. Good morning for the people. So it's really more of a comment. I thank you all, or I thank you and your organization, as well as you all that I met earlier this morning, because we're now entering into the citizenship civics arena. We're in K-12, and so it's a really different space for adult education because you have to navigate it. We're within the district, but without the district. So some of the resources and supports that we have to provide have to kind of fall in line with some of the guidance from the school district because we're a part of the school district in name. But this was really helpful in terms of how we need to set up our program, the resources that I need to consider providing, volunteering for the citizenship piece because we are under the IELCE grant, well, we will be, versus USCIS or any other grant that can't fund certain aspects of it. We're also WILVA funded as well. So thank you for that because those nuances I didn't know. And so that's going to help me in terms of marketing the program. But I just wanted to say thank you. This was really knowledgeable and insightful for me.
And I will just share really briefly because I did say that I was going to talk about it. So some instances of alternative funding sources. We have provided citizenship classes previously for a business. We do on-site workplace contractual classes. So we'll go into a business, they'll let us know what their workforce population needs. We'll test them, and then we will hold that class. So we have had a really great partner in one of the businesses locally who has asked us to provide a citizenship class for their workers. Just not talking about the workplace, talking about citizenship because they had a large group of their workforce that was interested in becoming citizen. And then more recently, we've been working with our West Michigan Asian American Association, and they were able to fund a class with a funding source through DTE. So DTE has been a great partner with funding that class. There are going to be people in your communities who this speaks to them. And now is kind of a time in our country where we're going to have to turn to private funding sources and companies and local businesses to step up and be leaders in the adult education realm, right? So always talking about, your successes of your students. It's going to pique someone's interest, right? Knowing that you have a great success rate, that's going to pique someone's interest. Someone's going to want to put their name to what you're doing and sponsor you in some way. So the more that you talk and share those success stories, the more likely you'll be able to find alternative forms of funding. Yeah. Yeah.
No, this is not an ESL class. Okay, so this is a citizenship class for English language learners, and this is an ESL class that includes some government. Not maybe get new ones.
Don't we all love unrestricted funding? Yeah. It's the spin on it. Yeah.
Frustrating. But this might be, like, like in the fun elements of the story, you have that climax and you have that thing that happens that takes you on another trajectory.
I'd love to keep that in mind. Yeah. That's the hopeful thinking. Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming to the presentation today. I have extra handouts, so if you have a colleague who you think might want to steal your handout, please feel free to take them. I don't want to take them back to Michigan.